Good evening, all of you. Good evening, students. I hope I'm audible. Let me just check out on YouTube. Today's morning session, I could hear myself really well. I hope I hope the voice remains equally good now. Good evening, students. Once again, are you able to hear me? I'll just check out if I can hear myself clearly. Yeah, I think I can hear my voice. So today morning was really satisfactory. The voice came out booming after several days, and today also I can see likewise. So I'm pretty happy for that. So let me, on that note, start with the class. Welcome all of you to the Unacademy channel on YouTube. Let's crack management exams. That's all. That's the name of our channel. The idea is to crack all the management exams: CAT, ZAT, and NMAT, MAT, CMAT, IFT, etc. So on that note, this is India's largest learning platform is Unacademy. This is a brief about myself. My name, as you can see, Aritro Dasgupta, and I'm an MBA in Forest Management from the Indian Institute of Forest Management in Bhopal. Got a decade's work experience in different areas such as teaching, training, strategy consulting, and into content writing. I'm also a bit of a social media influencer on the food segment. My experiences have been in India, UAE, and the USA. Uh, Fairly well traveled worldwide. And of course, last few years I have been heavily involved with the coaching industry, and I've had toppers in different exams such as CAT, CLAT, DUJAT, etc., who have been my students. I'm sure this was mostly online, offline, but I'm pretty confident this year offline as well. We will be producing similar results. Me and my team. You can catch us all on our channels. Right. So what you're gonna get from our sessions? I've taken quite a few classes already at Unacademy, so it appears a little repetitive. But I'll just repeat again. You get live classes on a daily basis. You get tests and quizzes. The course content is structured, and of course, you get unlimited access. That's the best part. The moment you enroll in our platform, you can get the same class again and again. You just need a subscription. You can view the same thing again and again. So today, of course, I'm going to do the newspaper round. Today morning, I had another session on reading habits, how to develop them. Right now, I will be taking a session on today's newspaper. So these are some of our key educators. You can see the names and how many followers they have and the watch minutes. Tomorrow and day after, I'm on a sort of a holiday, so I'm not going to take classes, but I'll make up for it. On Monday, I'm going to do Monday's newspaper and also going to analyze Saturdays. I will not be doing the daily stuff of Saturday because that won't make sense, but the overall broader things, such as from the editorial and the other articles. I'm sure even on the live days, I don't really do the daily up down of COVID or something. That's something you would have noticed. So these are some of our top educators. These are a few more of the names. This is how you get the sample. You can see of how you get the notification for different classes. So in case you want to do profit and loss, there is a class at 4 p.m. It's not today, just to show you how the notifications are released at Unacademy. This is another slide on how the batches are formed. So you can actually get your specific batches with a particular educator on the unacademy.com platform. That of course is a paid one. Language is not a barrier. Please do not worry about this aspect because we have our platform runs in 16 different languages, and we do value bilingualism. So in fact, even in my classes, I pepper it with a bit of Hindi from time to time. Learn anytime, anywhere. That's the best part. You just need a PC, mobile, or a tablet. So that is a schedule that works for you because anytime you have access, you can go ahead with the stuff. Live polls can be answered because there will be frequent polls, especially on the online platform of Unacademy. This particular template that you can see, this is actually from there. So my special classes will begin sometime in the next month, which is in August. You can get your doubts cleared while you are interacting with your educator. So just to give you a sample of how that works. So this is my cursor. You can see on the right side of the page, there's a live chat. So please feel free to comment whatever you feel like. Okay, this is some of the other advantages that you get. You get detailed PDFs and learning material. As you can see, I have curated material of the past months. So please go through all of that for the latest content. You also get detailed report and analysis on the classes. So once you give your tests, you can actually measure where you stand against the rest of the country through these tests. There are frequent tests and quizzes, of course. So, in fact, not just overall test scores, you also get scores for individual questions, topics, and how much learning you require in those areas alone. So I want you guys to read this carefully once before I start speaking. My code is mentioned at the bottom, AD09. It's a 0, not an O. So please use that. I think on YouTube there is a slight mistake I can see today. It's mentioned DAS1. That is not correct. It's actually AD09. So please use this code, AD09. So you can see per month the cost reduces more number of months that you go for a program. So take a look at this, all of you. Right, I think everybody's gone through this. Please do note that the shorter the program, the more you pay per month. With my code, you get a 10% off. If you go for a 2-year program, it's the cheapest. You only pay $788 per month. So I think I would personally recommend you go for that. Even if you want to go for just one attempt, at least go for the 12 months, because then it will take care of in case there are any delays to the exam this year due to COVID-19, and of course it covers the other exams as well, like XAT, which is typically in January, and of course in Feb March you have all the interviews, group discussions, etc., and of course things could get postponed, so this year especially. So please at least go for the 12-month program. Rest is your decision. Right, so I'm done with the introduction on Unacademy. I will not now start with the main topic for the day, which, as you know, is the newspaper analysis. So as usual, I'm going to start with India's #1 newspaper when it comes to general awareness, that is the Hindu. Why do I recommend everybody to read Hindu? That may be a question. In fact, not just me. If you notice, general awareness teachers all over the country, they recommend the Hindu. Why is that? And the other papers are also very good. But the advantage with Hindu is that it has all India coverage. It has news from all over the country. It has fewer ads. Now, ads, I understand they are necessary for someone to survive. So I'm not speaking against ads. All I'm saying is that they are not excessive on this newspaper. Right, so you have all India coverage, especially the editorials are truly highly informative. Right, so I showed you the newspaper. Now to discuss a few things. I start with COVID-19, which is of course something which has been the top news for the last couple of months. India now has the 5th highest number of fatalities in the world, behind USA, Brazil, UK. I guess Mexico is 4th. I'm not sure. I think it is Mexico. India is now 5th. India has overtaken Italy. Although our deaths per million is one of the lowest in the world, it's around 2.4%, which makes it one of the lowest. But the overall, of course, with our huge population, we have now gone to 5th rank in something we didn't want to. All right. The Rajasthan Assembly should restart very soon with the Gehlot government coming in 2 terms. It's going to start pretty soon, it seems. So there's some news from the USA. I don't know if you've heard of this person, but he has been highly trending the last few months. His name has been all over the news. His name is Anthony Fauci. Have you guys heard of him? Let me just put down his name. Um, have you guys heard of him? Especially from the medical fraternity in that context. Let me see if anybody can answer. So who is Anthony Fauci? He's actually the chief medical advisor of the Trump government, Donald Trump government. And he's considered one of the world's top epidemiologists, although he has been criticized by a group of scientists called the immunologists, and I spoke about that rivalry. So I think last week I spoke about it. Immunologists feel that epidemiologists have given too much stress. They have done a lot of panic mongering rather than looking for solutions. So the rivalries are common between different branches of scientists and intellectuals and thinkers. That's common, of course. So where was I? Yeah. So Anthony Fauci, who's the senior medical advisor to Donald Trump, he says that India is going to play a really critical role in this fight against COVID-19 because of the vaccine facilities. He feels that once a vaccine or something resembling a vaccine or at least an antidote has been developed, India's vast manufacturing capabilities will be able to meet this thing. So India will end up being among the largest producers of the same. There's a story at the bottom of the newspaper which is quite a heartwarming story. The NCW, any idea what is the full form of the NCW? Something to do with women's rights and women's groups. The NCW stands for National Commission for Women. So the National Commission for Women, they have highlighted a story about a young girl, or rather a young woman. She's 19 years old. Her name is Mansi Bariha, originally from Odisha. So she was actually trapped in a brick kiln. In Hindi we call Eat Ki Bhatti, where bricks are processed, and it's really labor intensive. Chemicals are also used quite a lot. The areas end up becoming like hot furnaces, one of the toughest physical jobs on earth. So she, along with several other young people, both men and women, many of them not that young, but many people who were working there, mostly migrant labor. So they had an agreement with with the bosses of these places to return home, but the owners of these brick kilns, they were not relenting. They did not allow them to go back. In fact, they even did some physical violence. She bravely, while she was hiding, she took up pictures and video, and she actually sent it to many places. And finally the district administration was contacted from somebody, and they came to the rescue. So they were actually working for really low amount of money. There were total 6,750 laborers, including 355 of them from a particular kiln where she was working. They have all been rescued and ferried from across the buses. 150 buses in total were arranged. All of them were not the trapped laborers, so 355 were the ones who were trapped here. So the others, as part of the 6,750, they are of course from different ones, but they have all been sent. There's an NGO called International Justice Mission, which has worked with the Tamil Nadu government for sending them back to their home. Most of these workers, they belong to a really impoverished area, tribal area of Odisha. These are Kalahandi, Bolangir, and Nuapada. There is another district with K, I can't recall the name. Kalahandi, Bolangir, and there was one more beginning with K. It's often known as the KBK belt, which is amongst the most impoverished in India. Odisha does have among the highest poverty rates in India. Right. Okay, moving ahead. Let me do some of the local pages. Today's editorials, I wasn't that impressed. Nothing which is really something which needs a lot of discussion. Manish Sisodia, the Education Minister of Delhi, he has lauded the NEP, New Education Policy, as a progressive document, but he says that they come with flaws. I think that's normal. I think there could be future discussions once Parliament convenes once again. I guess Rajya Sabha has started reopening to quite an extent. Now the Lok Sabha will also pretty soon. So I think there will be discussions from the different parties and different state governments. Maybe there can be, as you know, it's a policy. Policies can be tweaked a bit. It's not a rule in that sense. Management students, once you enter B school, one of the first subjects you study will be principles of management. So there you'll actually be studying the differences between rules and policies. A rule is binding. Policy is a broad document, broad guideline, which should be followed to the letter of the law, but not should be followed for its principle, but not for the letter of the law. The idea is that here there could be modifications along the way. So they have different purposes. Delhi government has actually cut VAT on diesel, so diesel's price has come down by 8 rupees. He says, Mr. Kejriwal, the chief minister, says this will boost the economy in the capital. The virus graph has actually dipped in Delhi. We've been speaking about this for the last week and how the fatalities and the infections have actually come down. So there is this general consensus in Delhi and in some of the other states as well that DMs, basically district magistrates, they should come up and reassess the containment zone. Many of the containment zones are going to be cut by half, because right now, I think you are aware, yesterday I spoke about this, we are at phase called Unlock 3, which begins mostly from tomorrow. So under Unlock 3, these changes will be implemented. Because obviously we need to live with the virus. It's not something which is going to disappear very soon. We can't close our economy. Right. So Unlock 3 will also allow hotels to operate in Delhi and other places as well. Night curfew is ended. We spoke about that. Hawkers, which are the street vendors, they can also operate, of course. There is a doctor who died due to COVID-19. His name is Mr. Javed Ali. So Mr. Kejriwal has called him a COVID-19 warrior. So the government of Delhi is going to give his kin 1 crore rupees as compensation because he was a COVID warrior who lost his life fighting this deadly virus. There's one very important news relating one of the IITs, which is IIT Madras. Now, IIT Madras was actually working with the local government. IIT Mumbai, not Madras. IIT Mumbai in Maharashtra. It was actually working with the local government to create a smog tower. What is a smog tower? Something similar is there in China. It's also there in Delhi. Smog tower, basically, it pulls in all the smog, basically cleaning up the smog. I mean, in layman's language, that's what it is about. A tower which pulls in the smog. Smog, is a combination of the words fog and smoke. So it pulls it in so that the air gets cleaner. So obviously it requires a lot of technical sophistication. The IIT Mumbai or IIT Powai, because it's in a suburb, they have been trying to work on this thing. So, but they suddenly went out of the project citing infeasibility. So then there was a bench led by Solicitor General Mr. Tushar Mehta, and they were not happy with the IIT's decision of withdrawing. So now they're coming back. They are having further discussions with the Solicitor General on the drawings of the project, which will take minimum 2 months. So nothing has started as yet. First of all, we need to begin with the drawings. So you're back to the drawing board, literally. That's the I know many of you are also preparing for vocab. I have also taught English, so sometimes I might just drift towards a bit of vocabulary. So back to the drawing board is actually a slogan, which means you start from the fresh, because drawing board is where you start, an architect starts, and then so whenever plans go awry or they fail, you go back to the drawing board where you begin your entire planning process. The Delhi University is planning on beginning the new session from 10th of August. They've had a few test runs earlier on when to start, but it kept getting delayed due to COVID-19. So finally, they've now decided 10th August is the date, but with online classes. There's no contact classes till end of August all over India. So it's not, schools and colleges are not part of Unlock 3. So that is the thing. Right. Now, there's some really important news from the state of Haryana. So the Deputy Chief Minister, Mr. Dushyant Chautala, who heads the regional party JJP, Jan Nayak Janata Party, he's earlier also been the MP. MP in Haryana, 2014 to 19. So he has his government. He actually now holds the ministry on labor and employment, labor welfare and employment. So what the labor ministry in Haryana has done is they have created this um, new system called the HUM, which stands for Haryana Udyam Memorandum. So very important thing is going to happen. So I'm going to read out the headline: Haryana to link registered organizations having contractual labor with the HUM. So there are lots of contractual labor who are not on full-time salaries, who are paid as per their work. Many of them, perhaps amounting to millions all over the country, and even in a state like Haryana, which is a mid-sized state, definitely would run into a few lakhs. So many of them lost their livelihood, or at least lost a huge part of their usual revenues, and so many of them had to go back to their states. Many of them may not be local from Haryana. So under this thing, they will be protected much better for their welfare. A lot of the employment welfare, which typically an employee or full-time employee receives from a company, is missing among independent contractors. And this is something which, so I would like to talk of this from a broader angle. It's not just related to Haryana or the laborers, but all over the world. A very good example is Uber drivers in the USA. They are not listed as employees by Uber. They are listed as independent contractors, which is why they do not get the kind of employment protection which many other employees would get. Now with lockdowns imposed all over North America, and also the fact that uh, even in places where things are a little bit more open, the individual people are still reluctant to travel and move out. So their business has gone down massively by 80% in many cases. So Uber drivers, many of them have left their jobs. They've sold their cars or trying to. Many have run away to other parts, small rural areas. So this is proving to be really difficult in the USA. So all over the world, employers all over the world, governments all over the world must realize that this gig economy, which involves a lot of part-timers and freelancers, this is here to stay. Not just related to the pandemic, it will go on. So you need to have proper policies in your company. I think some of you may have attended yesterday. I took a session on how to thrive in the gig economy. So these kind of session, if you go through my session, I told you how it was born from working class backgrounds, blue collar migrants. So this is blue collared workers, but it will also affect all of us. Many of you might become freelancers. So the kind of employee protection is something which needs to be worked on. So good effort by the Haryana government. Hope it can be implemented well. So this announcement was made at the Advisory Contract Labour Board. Dushyant Chautala's party, they are in power in coalition with the BJP. BJP was in power 2014 to 19, could not win the state on its own this time, fell little short of it. So they are now in coalition with the JJP in Haryana. Right. Okay. Moving on to the other pages. In Bihar, again, just like in Delhi, we saw Dr. Javed Ali's death. Similarly, in Bihar, 11 doctors have died of COVID-19. This is not for a single day, but overall the case. All over India, around 48,000 cases yesterday, although data from Tripura and Arunachal Pradesh did not arrive by then. There is really bad news in Manipur, not to do with COVID, but on the national security front. So let me give you a little bit of a background. The northeast of India, especially the states of Manipur and Nagaland, Mizoram, parts of Assam, and not in Tripura much, not Tripura or Arunachal much, but the others of the Seven Sisters, they have over the last 5 decades frequently, or last 6 since independence, you could say, I think that's the best way to define, there have been a lot of clashes between local parties, local groups, and the Indian army or Indian state establishment. There have been a lot of separatist moves, not just for separate country, but also for separate state. So a lot of these states were created because there were movements within there. Many of them were designated union territory for a while before becoming full-fledged states, getting greater powers. And of course, there have been fully independent, secessionist moves as well, armed, violent conflicts. So it is often said that the 1960s and 70s were two of the most challenging decades for the unity of India. That's where the government was threatened at many places, but of course, eventually the governments were able to retain all of that as integral parts of India. Now, but so now things are much less of trouble than it was earlier. Many have been assimilated into the broader Indian culture and Indian political system, but there are frequent clashes. Now, there is a group called ULFA, which stands for United Liberation Front of Assam. They have probably been amongst the, shall I say, the most violent. Fortunately for the Indian state, fortunately for all of us, there was a breakup within ULFA itself. So they could not be united themselves. So there's an independent faction within ULFA, which actually caused some of this attack. There were some other groups involved. Let me tell you the names. One is the Manipur National People's Front. Another is the Revolutionary People's Front. And of course, ULFA Independent. These three together clashed with the Assam Rifles. Assam Rifles is one of the army regiments in the northeast of India. So three men have been killed. That is confirmed. There are probably a few more as well, as the name suggests. Among those dying, one is from Assam, another is from Manipur, and one from Nagaland. Among the people who have lost their lives bravely fighting for the country. So this is a bit of a sad news. Now, moving on, the chief priest at Ayodhya for the Ram Mandir seems to have contacted COVID-19 contracted. So that will be a big sort of a challenge now. Right. Okay. The Chief Minister of Maharashtra, Shri Uddhav Thackeray, he has asked officials in the city of Pune especially to allow for more number of hospitals. Jumbo hospitals should now be created. The opposition in Maharashtra, which is basically the BJP, they have mentioned how properties at Lavasa. Now, what is Lavasa? Let me tell you a little bit. So, what they are saying is, okay, I'll come back to this. So, Lavasa is just off Pune, and when it was, inaugurated, it was called the first ever hill station which has been developed by Indians, because until then all the hill stations, or I should say until now, all hill stations were British made. I mean, that's the general understanding. If you look at Shimla, Darjeeling, Mussoorie, Dehradun, they were pretty much British establishments, Lansdowne, but this was fully Indian made. However, it ran into a lot of conflicts regarding the land, because there was a dam built, and this Lavasa was probably built on the backwaters of that dam itself. So this encroached upon highly sensitive land, and this was one of the big violations of environmental acts. So as of now, so there were lots of investment initially, lots of hotel properties, but now they have lost their business because many of them are unable to this is not because of COVID-19, but because of the many numerous legal hurdles. Even though they've built the properties, they're not able to operate them. The governments are not giving them the paper work to operate. So now, because these properties are lying vacant, the opposition in Maharashtra has suggested that these could be converted into care centers for COVID-19, because there are lots of hotels, lots of properties in that area. The new education policy is pretty much dominant on the editorial page. So one of the writers is Mr. Bhaskar Ramamurthy. He is director of IIT Madras, and he has written about the huge challenges. He says he has welcomed this, saying that this has been bold, innovative. So it has a sweeping vision. He's really happy. However, of course, there are implementation challenges, and that, of course, depends on us, the people. There is also an article on serology and how the sero surveys may or may not work out. There is also a debate between two people. One of them is former chairperson and managing director of VSNL, Sanchar Nigam Limited. V is probably Videshi. Not sure. I'll have to check. The other person is a professor at the International Institute of Information Technology in Bengaluru, Triple IT. I think I mentioned to you in one of the current affairs classes on how there are so many triple ITs in the country. Many of them run on a PPP, model, which is public-private partnership. They have now been allotted INI status, Institute of National Importance. So these two people, these two gentlemen, Mr. B.K. Singhal and Professor V. Sridhar, they have had this debate on the newspaper about the telecom sector. So the question is, should the government go easy on the telecom sector? There's one school of thought which says government is too strict and the telecom sector is not able to thrive under these restrictions which appear license Raj like. On the other hand, the other view is that the telecom sector has seen some of the worst of corruption, and so it does require greater control. And of course, now because of data transfer and the fact that there is so much of fear about privacy and cyber security, so telecom is one thing which has to be heavily regulated. That's also one school of thought. So Hindu also has this thing about old news. So there is this news about West Bengal Assembly being dissolved 50 years back on this day. I believe that was a transition period between Congress and the left rule before left became super strong, 1977 onwards. Before that, there were 5 years of Congress rule, but before that, there was this United Front government which lasted a few years, and then it saw defections and changes. So it was a president's rule, I believe, for a while before Congress came back in 1972 in West Bengal. There is also this article by Mr. R. Prasad. Ravindranath Prasad, he speaks about this not being the right time to open gyms, according to him. The belief is that the gyms are closed spaces with a lot of people who are sweating, and they will obviously be touching a lot of things because these things will be open. Now, a gym can't invest on 50 different sets of dumbbells of the same weight category. Obviously, if there are 50 people, they will rely on the same dumbbells again and again. So constant sterilization is going to take place, constant sanitization. But how much can you really do it? That's going to be, he says that even bars and restaurants or movie theaters are safer than gyms, according to this writer. But the other counter view is also that the WHO recommends 30 minutes minimum of physical activity every day. So gyms obviously definitely do serve that purpose. Let me just hear my volume once. Right. So I can hear my voice clearly, booming voice today. Last couple of days, my voice seemed unclear, but today it's going really good. I'm really happy about that. So anyway, I'll move on to the next page. Andhra Pradesh has been one of the scariest cases. From nowhere, the state has emerged as the second highest concentration after Maharashtra. In fact, daily infections in Andhra has crossed that of Maharashtra. It's a huge challenge for the Chief Minister, who's a young person in his first term, Sri Jagan Mohan Reddy. So Andhra Pradesh was a few weeks back ranked 11th among the states with the cases, but now it's second, only behind Maharashtra. Seen a massive, a steep rise up. Not in an area where you want a steep rise up. The state of Kerala has developed another action plan to fight against COVID-19. So even religious leaders and NGOs are part of this to spread the message of distancing and wearing masks and sanitization. Karnataka did hold its exams, state exams, common entrance test. So results will be out in 15 to 20 days. So 2 to 3 weeks basically. The railways are going through modernization and upgradation of passenger amenities because last couple of months, very few trains have been functioning. So this has been the ideal time for upgradation. The railways have, just like the Delhi Metro, they've used this period for a lot of the pending tasks. Andhra Pradesh is supposed to have another airport in the city of Nellore, but that agreement has now been cancelled by the government due to some irregularities in the contract. There is an actor who has passed away, Sri Anil Murali, who played a lot of villain roles in Malayalam film. So that is one thing. Some of the opposition parties, they want a debate in parliament on the NEP, new education policy. I think Congress and the left parties like CPIM, they have mentioned that. And they're also saying that it is not available on the public domain, so people are unable to read. There has been some backlash from some states like Tamil Nadu and West Bengal on this thing. So let's see how it works. As I said, it's a policy, so things will move fairly slowly. Mm, Right. I told you yesterday how at the Raj Bhavan of Himachal Pradesh, the Raj Bhavan is where the governor stays. There was going to be a cabinet expansion in the cabinet of Chief Minister Sri Jairam Thakur. So three new members of the Legislative Assembly have been made ministers. I'll read out the names. One is Mr. Sukram Chaudhary, who's the MLA from Paonta Sahib, which is a very important religious pilgrimage center for Sikhs, a beautiful place. There's also Mr. Rakesh Pathania, who's the MLA from Nurpur, and Mr. Gajinder Garg, who's an MLA from Ghumarvin. All three of them took oath as ministers yesterday. Uh, the official spokesperson for India's Ministry of External Affairs, Mr. Anurag Srivastav, he has mentioned how Delhi, or rather India, it wants mutual respect with Bangladesh. So that I think has been reiterated, that how India respects the good relations it has with Bangladesh. Australia has also written how India and China must show restraint. This is not a time to pick up border fights when the world is fighting a pandemic. Okay, now the Supreme Court has spoken out about the need to solve the man-animal conflicts, human-animal conflicts, which often becomes quite violent. We saw a terrible case from Kerala about a month back about an elephant which probably accidentally consumed pineapple. Anyway, that was a gory story, but you do know what I'm referring to, where the elephant died, cruel conditions, a pregnant elephant. So the Supreme Court has said, Supreme Court understands that sometimes these animals, they can disrupt crops, and that's harmful for the farmers who have spent a year or several months preparing that in the first place. So they do need protection. So what you do is you create explosive that do not kill, but they make noise and rubber bullets to scare off the animals. Some of these animals have been identified as vermin. So this was actually a bench headed by the Chief Justice of India, Shri Arvind Bobde, who headed a three-judge bench. So that was the suggestion. And there was also talk about so another senior advocate, Mr. Siddharth Luthra, he spoke about how human encroachments, increasing human encroachment into wildlife areas, that is going to further accentuate the problems because animals do not have any place to then move to be to. Okay, there's a very important new appointment. Mr. Hardik Shah will now be the private secretary at the PMO, so the private secretary to the Prime Minister. He's an IAS officer who will replace Mr. Rajiv Topno, who held this post until recently. So he used to be a member secretary of the Gujarat Pollution Control Board, or GPCB, and now he has got this promotion. Flood situation in Bihar gets worse. There's also some news on political parties and their spending in different elections. I told you a few days back about how a Bhopal gas tragedy survivor, she wants an additional pension to take care of the present pandemic. In Odisha, there is a sort of the crisis, so food crisis has suddenly taken on. So many people are actually, in order to fight off chances of a famine or a drought, they're actually eating less and less, says the story. So there is a right to food campaign which is also taking place, especially along the coastal areas of the state of Odisha. Couple of important points I want to read out to you from the international page. We've been discussing for the last few days about China and Hong Kong and how some foreign countries have stopped the extradition treaty with Hong Kong, and they've stopped exporting certain goods they feel that China will use for repressing the people, surveillance. China likewise has cancelled the extradition treaty that Hong Kong holds with some other countries as well. I'm sorry, just got a sudden phone call. Okay, so now in Hong Kong, 12 more. It's going to have an election, a local election. Hong Kong, does have elections. So 12 opposition candidates have been barred from the election. One of them is a senior person known as Joshua Wong. Donald Trump, he has been seen in this picture not wearing a mask, while all the other officials are wearing a mask. It's these kind of visuals which are really disturbing. So anyway, as the leader, this probably should not be accepted. But anyway, so now what Donald Trump has a suggestion, which is to postpone the election, because obviously USA has elections this year. Barely barely 100 days remaining for the elections, barely 3 months remaining. So he wants it to be postponed, Mr. Donald Trump, because he fears that there could be foreign interference. I mean, there is a lot of fear that there's a belief that Russia probably interfered last time in 2016. So he fears something similar could take place again this year, and that is why maybe it can be postponed. Right. Moving on to some more news on China. China has conducted some drills on the South China Sea. This is defense practice. Nowadays, anything China and its defense does, we tend to view it from a certain lens. But this could just be a regular thing that it says. But something which is really alarming, not far from China, is in its neighboring country of Vietnam. Vietnam has generally been hailed over the last 3 4 months as one of the great success stories of COVID-19. Vietnam is actually a dictatorship, a communist dictatorship, in spite of which they did extremely well. In spite of not being a democracy, they did so well. And in fact, 99 consecutive days, Vietnam did not see a single case. And of course, the country hasn't reported a single death all this while, which is phenomenal considering they're right next to China. I might get my facts a little bit wrong. There may have been a few deaths, but by and large, the general consensus is that the deaths and cases have been very few. That too for a country which is right next to China. So the general belief is that they got wind of this news right from the outset, while the rest of the world took it lightly in January and February and only started acting in March. They got active from January itself, closed things down, did a lockdown, reduced trade with China, started sanitizing, and so they were successful. However, there has suddenly been an outbreak. In fact, in not just one place, had it been a single source, people could actually address that and put a containment zone there. But it's been 6 parts of the country, and in the last 1 week, there have been 43 fresh cases, and things get worse. So one of the experts of the country, Mr. Da Nang, he feels that this is probably a more virulent form of that same virus. This is a more dangerous one because this is even more lethal than the previous one. So this is a different wave, and yeah, and that's proven through the fact that among all the people now facing the problem, it is much more severe. Their throat troubles are much more than was earlier. So about 80,000 tourists have been asked to leave immediately the city of Hanoi, which is the capital of Vietnam. There's more news from Russia. A former US Marine, Mr. Trevor Reed, has been sentenced to 9 months in prison. He wasn't a Marine when he committed the crime. He was in Russia, and he probably punched. He had a fight with a few police officers. He's originally from Texas. Some experts have said this is a political move, but Russia says it is absolutely apolitical. Okay, some important news from our neighboring country of Sri Lanka. The country is set to have its elections soon. So there is a group known as the TNA, which is basically a Tamil party. There are lots of Tamilians in Sri Lanka. They are a visible minority. I don't know the exact numbers, but something around the sixth or the fifth of the country's population. They, of course, fought a deadly 2 decade long civil war with the LTTE as its head. But for the last 15 years, the threat has largely been quelled since Prabhakaran, who was the head, he died in an attack in 2005. So things have been largely peaceful in Sri Lanka during this period, but now some problems seem to have restarted. So the TNA is what a lot of people fear. So let's see how things work out now. Fair enough. I'm done with the international page. Something on the business page. There's a report which says that in the US economy may have declined by a record 33%, which is a third contraction, which I somehow find it hard to believe. This will be absolutely gigantic because US economy is about $20 trillion. To come down to 14 trillion seems to me too high. So employment has surged 14.7%. This I do believe, of course. It also says that the greatest contraction US has seen was 10%, which was in 1958. I think what they mean by 10% contraction is 10% reduction from the previous quarter. Whole economy, I doubt, can contract so much. So maybe I have probably not understood fully. There has also been a $3 trillion infusion into the economy. As has been all over the world, the biggest sufferers have been travel, tourism, malls, entertainment, etc. In fact, economists were polled by Reuters, which is a leading global, shall I put it, news agency. So, what Reuters has come up, they are forecasting a GDP plunging by 34.1%. Absolutely phenomenal. So while momentum was building once again in May for restart of the business, now it is once again a slump because every day we are seeing about 1,500 deaths, which is about a death a minute. So things are really not good. Cyrus Mistry, who's the chief of Tata Sons, he says that there is no special relation between Tata Sons and SP Group, which is the Shapoorji Pallonji Group. SP Group is the largest external non-Tata family owner of the Tata Sons, owning about 18% of the company, 18.37% equity. So there has long been this belief that there is an unwritten relation between the two companies. He has squashed those rumors, says that there is nothing like that. All right. The demand for gold, unsurprisingly, has fallen to an 11-year low. Last time it was so low was at the height of the economic recession. Right now, we are seeing a 70% decline in the first quarter due to the lockdown. Obviously, with the marriage market having declined so much, that also plays a very big role because marriages, of course, are amongst the key areas where uh, gold is used. The Chola Mandalam Investment and Finance Limited, their net profits have actually increased by 37%. That's brilliant. So finally, there's some good news. The CEO of the Bharti Group, Mr. Gopal Vittal, who's the MD and CEO, he says that there is a long way to reach 5G network. So the spectrum at 50,000 crore for 100 megahertz is way over the top. So he says that we need much more time, perhaps years, before we have a proper 5G network in India. Just give me a moment. I'll just sort one small thing. Right. Sorry for the interruption. I'll just continue from here. Okay, so Reliance Industries Limited, their profit has jumped 31%, even though revenue has declined by 42%. This clearly shows that they have definitely reduced their costs by a significant margin. I just need to check the volume from time to time. Nielsen, which is one of the world's largest and definitely one of India's largest marketing research firms. I'll actually take a class on different business categories. So, what are the top investment banks? Which are the top credit rating agencies? The biggest of market research firms. So that will be helpful for you guys. So Nielsen, it has actually cut the FMCG outlook to flat growth. So they say that the growth will be flat this year, which means a flat curve. Basically, I think you can understand it will remain stable but won't go up much. HDFC, their quarter one net profits have dropped by 5%, which is still not bad. I mean, the profit, they at least are in pink. So, but it's just reduced by 5%. There's a 53 crore net loss posted by Sundaram Clayton, which is a standalone company, of course. Right. The Religare, again, a very big company, financial services. Their NBFC arm eyes resolution in 6 months because there are some conflicts going on. Lakshmi Vilas Bank, its loss has come down to 112 crore rupees. The Karur Vyasa Bank's quarter one profit, however, rises by 45%. So we are seeing a lot of up down in today's news. Tata Power has said that they will focus on renewables, while Laurus Labs' quarter one net profit has surged to 171.78 crore rupees. So it is not all doom and gloom. Today, the business paper page sees quite a few positive points as well. Okay, there is a report by the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth has this body known as Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative. So they have confirmed that by 2030 they are fighting towards eradicating slavery. Now, this might surprise a lot of you to understand that slavery apparently still exists on the planet. Slavery was supposed to be back then in the West Indies, the Caribbean, with this Atlantic slave trade. You've seen a lot of movies probably on this. But the shocking part is that there are millions of people right now on Earth who are existing in conditions of which resembles nothing but slavery, which is they are owned by people literally. So the Commonwealth countries are actually responsible for about 40%, which is two-fifths of the world's people living under conditions of modern slavery. The Commonwealth group right now includes total 54 countries because Maldives returned. I think I discussed in one of the current affairs classes. So according to this report, this will need to be worked out, of course. There are some form of slavery in about yeah, so about 1 in every 150 people apparently in the Commonwealth lives in some form of slavery. So this is absolutely shocking. Slavery need not be of the type you've seen in films, but definitely the debt trap is a common way of getting trapped into this thing. Right, so this was it for the other stuff. Now I'm going to move towards my favorite section, which is sports. Congratulations to England. Yesterday was fun watching the first one-day international since the lockdowns. There were 3 test matches, but this was the first one-day. I actually have an interest in the Irish cricket team because I have a feeling they're going to be really good in a couple of years. Didn't do that well yesterday, all out for 172. England won by 6 wickets. The total 3 one-day internationals which will take place yesterday, of course, was in Southampton's Rose Bowl Stadium. So I remember Gareth Delaney, he was hitting quite a few fours yesterday before he got out. They had a terrible start, but reached 170 thanks to a 59 not out by Curtis Camphor and also a 40 by Andy McBride. David Willey, the English fast bowler who actually returned yesterday after a long time, he picked up 5 wickets. He ended up with 5 for 30. Sakib took 2 wickets as well. Then, of course, England chased it fairly easy. Indian swimmer Sri Hari says that they were prepared for the Olympics this year, but of course, this lockdown means that they have lost a lot of momentum. The AFI, which is the Athletics Federation of India, they are going to be really strict about athletes breaking the lockdown rules. So there are two science centers. Science stands for Sports Authority of India. They've got two major centers in Patiala and the other in Bengaluru, where athletes are supposed to train on what is called a bio bubble. So if they break that, they will be heavily punished. Some people have done that already, but so they have been forgiven, the ones who've done so far. But in the future, this must not take place. Uh, So there is this cause called Livelihood Matters. So Sunfeast of course is a big brand under the ITC, within the ITC family. So Sunfeast India has this initiative called Run as One, which is also being done by the ProCam International. So different kinds of people are advised to run in this, and the proceeds will go for towards charity. Ashok Mustafi, a former coach from West Bengal, cricket coach, he actually was the coach of Saurav Ganguly during his formative years before Ganguly got selected to the Indian national team. He was his mentor at West Bengal. So he has passed away. He did play a few first class matches for Bengal. I think two wasn't very successful, but made his mark as a coach. In Italy, Juventus, they've won 9 Serie A titles in a row, but then they lost few days back, day before yesterday, lost to Cagliari. Cagliari isn't a bad team. They have a few good players, Robin Olsen, the Swedish goalkeeper, Radja Nainggolan, the Belgian combative midfielder. So it's not that they're really bad, but they defeated Juventus. Juventus has nothing to play for now. They won this, the Serie A, did not win the cup. Napoli won it. But they now have the Champions League returning, so that is the big target. Cristiano Ronaldo was bought for one purpose only. They had already won 7 Serie A's in a row and a few doubles as well, but Ronaldo was bought to win the Champions League, and he wants to do it as well, having won it 4 times with Real Madrid, once with Manchester United. He wants to win a record 6th Champions League, and this is his vehicle. So it's going to resume from 7th August. We have our eyes there. Some more news from the Serie A. Ciro Immobile has now scored 35 league goals this season, which is nearly a record. Gonzalo Higuain had scored 36 in 2015-16. So that has been a Serie A record for a single season. So he's now just one short of that, of equalizing. And ironically, his teams, he plays for Lazio. The last match of the season is against Napoli, the team for whom Higuain scored 36 goals. Immobile's career wasn't going anywhere, but last 4 years, since he's joined Lazio, he has done really well. In fact, even 2 years back, he was the top goal scorer in Serie A. There are some critics who believe he's overtly dependent on penalties. He scored 14 penalties this year. But even at 21, he's the leading scorer of outfield goals, because even Ronaldo, who has 25, 26, even he has quite a few penalties. Right. Sassuolo won 5-0 against Genoa. That, of course, AC Milan won 4-0 against... 4-1 against Sampdoria, also based in Genoa. Bad day for the city of Genoa. Ibrahimovic scored both halves of the goal. He's almost 40, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, but he continues to score 2 goals, 1 in each half. In fact, he says about himself that I'm like Benjamin Button. I'm improving further with age. Right, a couple of Pakistani fast bowlers, Mohammad Amir and his teammate Haris Rauf, they have been cleared. They were found COVID-19 positive, but now they've been cleared to play. Pakistan is set to tour England for a few matches, test matches and T20s. Ashley Barty, who's world number 1 in women's lawn tennis, she's an Australian. She has withdrawn from playing in the US Open, fearing social distancing will not be maintained. The French Open and Wimbledon were cancelled, but Australian Open is the US Open is set to take place in September, beginning on, I believe, beginning on 31st August till 13 September in New York City's Flushing Meadows ground. Right, Xavi Hernandez has returned to fitness. He no longer has COVID-19. East Bengal Football Club has a new coach now. His name is, he's from Goa. His name is Francisco Jose Bruto da Costa, and he has replaced the Spaniard Mario Rivera, who helped East Bengal finish second in the I-League last year. Right, I'm done with the Hindu. I'll move ahead to the Times of India. Just about a 15-minute analysis. Done with the Hindu. Just let me get that. Before I start with the Times of India, there's also an engineering. Times of India has also conducted an engineering survey for the best colleges in the country. I doubt whether the IITs are in. Okay, the IITs are. All of them may not have participated, but among the 150 best engineering colleges, this could be really useful. But of course, most of you here would have already gone through. So Delhi Technological University (DTU) has been ranked number one in this list. BITS Pilani Ram number two. SRM Chennai is rank three in this. Among the emerging institutes, UCE in Mumbai is number one. So you can probably go through that at some stage. Now moving on to the Times of India. Lots of important, rather good articles there on that supplement. You can go through that. Little bit from the Times of India. Most of it is the same. Um, Let me just see if there's something. Yeah, so basically, even 14 cops. I told you about the head priest, but even 14 policemen who were supposed to be part of the Ram Janmabhoomi, this Ram Mandir inauguration in Ayodhya, the construction inauguration, they have 14 cops have also tested positive. That is really worrying now. Among the states, Karnataka, Bihar, West Bengal, and Andhra are the new hotspots of COVID-19, but 24 states have a lower death rate than the rest of the country. Right, not much else to discuss. Just quickly run through this. There is also an interview with the Union Minister, HRD Minister, soon to be the Union Education Minister, Mr. Ramesh Pokhriyal, whose pen name is Nishank, as he's also a poet and an astrologer. So he has clarified a number of questions that experts had. Mm. Okay, there's a very important interview of Mr. Dinesh Singh. Some of you may have forgotten Dinesh Singh, but he was a lot in the news as the Chancellor, Vice Chancellor of Delhi University. In the years in between 2013 and 14, the reign may have been longer, but those were critical years because that's when DU started what became a really unpopular introduction. It was the FYUP, which is the 4-year undergraduate program. So, and that was one which united the right and the left wing. Everyone attacked the program. So it had to be withdrawn after just 1 year. But he has welcomed this new move because even now the entire education policy, not just in DU, but the entire country will have a 4-year graduation as per the 5+3+3+4 system. Right. So that is what he talks about. So he's actually welcomed this thing, and there have been questions, probing questions on how you were attacked back then, but now this has been implemented. So he's saying happy. He says that he'll be happy to share the knowledge acquired during the FYUP with other universities if they want to take this on. I told you earlier about this trending hashtag on social media, hashtag bounce back India, which talks about how Indians are, and generally the economy is bouncing back. So there is this story about some vegetable deliveries in Mumbai. Yesterday I told you about a statue in, or rather a sculpture in a temple in Rajasthan, a Natesan statue which was stolen since 1998. It has been missing. It has now returned to India. There's one more. We are doing well in terms of art recovery, it seems. So this was stolen in 1998. There's a Shiva statue which is back to India. It has been located in Great Britain. Like yesterday's one, this too is a 10th century style, Pratihara style. Pratiharas were a dynasty between the 8th and the 10th century AD. They were dominant in Rajasthan, especially southern Rajasthan. They were involved in a tripartite struggle with Palas from Bengal and the Rashtrakutas from Karnataka. So they were patrons of art, and this thing, of course, was stolen. Has been missing since 1998. The Indian High Commission since 2005 has been alert about this, and finally we have recovered this. In the editorial, there is an interesting article by Mr. Indrajit Hazra. This is on the state of the television news right now and how it is often over the top. So he actually speaks about one of the persons who does a BBC series, web series, and TV series. His name is Hassan Minhaj, who does the Patriot Act, and how he performs it in a different style to the rest of the country. Right. Most of the business news, of course, is fairly common. Brookfield may acquire 50% of RMZ for $800 million. Right. Otherwise, pretty much the same. On the sports page, there's more news of East Bengal's appointment, and of course, Juventus's shock defeat. And just to clarify one point, a lot of people have been worried that what happens to English medium schools. It has been pretty well clarified that schools can take decision on the medium of instruction, but of course they will also, uh, they will have freedom, but they will have to somehow involve the three languages till class 5, which I think is a good move, because till class 5, when a child is young, he or she can take up all kinds of languages. And all of us who learned languages, that was actually at a very young stage. I remember, I mean, I don't remember, but it's till the age of 6 or 7, I was proficient in three languages, because in school I was taught English, my neighbors used to speak Hindi, and of course on TV I would watch Hindi movies, and of course my parents spoke Bengali. So I mean, by the age of 7, 8, I think I was proficient in a few languages, at least speaking and understanding. So I mean, with better training, I hope this really works out and Indian culture can do well here. Sanjay Manjrekar, former Indian Test cricketer, he wants to be taken back as a commentator by the BCCI. The BCCI banned him. I think there was some controversy with one of the cricketers of the team. So he did not toe the line. So he wants to be back for the IPL. Right. There's an interesting story on a former Indian spinner. His name is Narendra Hirwani. Some of the youngsters here may not be aware of him. About 3 decades back, he made his international debut for India. And shockingly, in his first ever test match, he picked up 16 wickets in one test match. That was his debut. Unfortunately for him and the country, his career went downhill after that. Never really repeated those heroics. So he ended up being a sort of a yo-yo man. Yo-yo man is typically somebody who gets selected, then dropped, then comes back, then dropped. And typically for test matches. Didn't play a lot of one-day internationals. He wasn't considered fit enough to play one-day internationals at a time when fitness wasn't as big, at least in the Indian team, as it's today. So that was quite a thing. So he speaks about some of his experience that he has seen. Him, just like Venkatapati Raju, Sunil Joshi, Rajesh Chauhan, there were some of those bowlers, spin bowlers, who would play matches on whenever they would be held in India, because Indian pitches back then were heavily dependent on spin. So they would do their job, but they would often get dropped for international tours. That was a common trend, and for one-day internationals, that was pretty pronounced with him, and also with Venkatapati Raju. Right. Fair enough. I'm pretty much done for today. I have a few more things to do now. So if there are any comments, I'll just keep this open for some time. People may get back to me. Write down to me any comments. Just like, share, and subscribe. AD09 is the code for joining my classes. Right. I think we can close the session for the day. Thank you so much, all of you. It was wonderful interacting with you. 2 days I'm going to be on a sabbatical due to some personal reasons. Going to chill out this weekend. But I will be back from Monday, taking the sessions once again. So Monday I'll take the Monday newspaper. I'll also take off a Saturday, which will not be stale because I will not be covering the daily COVID infections, but only the broader points from editorial, sports, anything which of broader importance. And of course, my favorite animal and on wildlife I would love because the Saturday Sunday papers, they have a lot of broad things on areas such as shall we put it, art, culture, cinema. So would love to share those things as well with you guys. On that note, thank you so much. See you guys very soon. Right? This is the code at the bottom mentioned.